No! About 2 years ago, I purchased this from a thrift shop. It's a nightstand, pretty rough condition, but it looked like it'd be great for a nice little flip. There's me and my cute little jammies. But first things first, we've got to strip all this old paint, all this old stain off this thing and make the wood look brand new. So we're spreading the stripper all over. I don't know if they even make this kind of stripper anymore. I haven't seen it. So I have this nice flat tool that allows me to, with the grain and not forcing the tool against the wood grain, to pull the stripper off of it first. You can use a sharpened razor blade or some of those, you know, really scraper tools will work, but they're kind of small most of the time, and so that works a lot better. Can't forget to strip the face of it without the drawers. This is quite honestly some of the most maddening piece, or some of the most maddening part of the nightstand, just simply because all the little grooves in there. Here I'm taking a fresh razor blade and just gently, again, trying not to go at an angle that messes anything up or scrapes any of the wood. Try to, you know, get the paint stripper off. One of the things you'll see me do here in a minute is use steel wool to get right there. So I'm using steel wool right there to kind of get in between the areas. So that's one of the techniques to try and get the stripper, you know, grind it off appropriately. I didn't show the whole thing here, but this is a great area to see like the detail I went to. So I didn't show the detail of doing this through the entire piece, but I did this on the entire piece. Now this is where I learned that these are actually veneers. I thought this was a whole wood piece, so to learn it was a veneer was kind of a bummer. I'm gonna make a huge mistake, one of many later on, in sanding the drawers because they're veneered as well. I'm just taking this thing apart. This is that same scraper tool, and there goes my camera falling down.
No.
But this is that same scraper tool, so you can see how helpful it is. Here I'm just kind of punching underneath this little piece that was glued together, and pop, came right off. Kind of cleaning up a little bit of that now. We're going to take these metal feet off of the piece. I had this idea a long time ago for this dotted wood. I don't even know what happened to that piece, so whatever. So here we're trying to repair the veneer without actually replacing it. So we're putting a lot of glue in the places where the veneer needs to rebind with the wood underneath. A nice little trick is to take the, you know, a skinny piece of excess wood you might have cut off, and you see how I'm putting that in between the veneer and the wood base, just to get the wood as far down as possible. Take a little sliver, excess sliver, and then of course get that glue really far down there to make a legit seal. This is a big mistake here. I'm trying to use a Japanese saw to just get this really thin piece off, and it just, as you can see right here, it just kind of pops off. Thankfully, it didn't pop off bad, so it worked really well. And I don't know what the hell that was. So we're on to sanding. I actually ended up stripping this whole piece twice. I didn't feel like you needed to see that, but now we're going to sand it, and you can really see how orange this is even after stripping everything off. It was at this point when I found out it was a veneer, I didn't want to strip everything else that I knew I was going to paint, so I just stuck to sanding. And this is kind of where this is kind of where the design popped in my head, since this was a lot of veneer. I didn't really feel bad about painting it. You can see I started to strip a part of it, and then learning it was a veneer, I kind of stopped and just went to sanding everything, which I got everything off just fine without any damage to the wood. Which some of these pieces were all wood, some of them were all veneer, and so good little mix there. Made a nice little piece. Here I'm hand sanding the grooves. This project made me buy some more like sanding tools that are meant for grooves, where they come in these really cool steep angles, like triangle angles for sanding. So that was one good thing. Here's where I mess up 100%. I'm not paying attention, and one of the drawers, you'll see me fix it later, one of the drawers I over sand the edges, and I think it's this one. Look right here. You can really see that I just go right through the veneer. And at that moment, I'm like, and it sits for 2 years. I had actually prepped it for the paint at this point, but it sat for 2 years as I moved from house to house. And so this is really, it literally is more than 2 years later. So you can see some of that blue tape is coming off. I had actually, as well, for me, even though this became not a full wood piece, so I didn't feel the need to do a lot of things you would do with real wood, I still think it's important to do what I call the right thing, or all the way. And so I actually painted the drawers black inside, and some of the back of the piece is all black as well. And then after 2 years, I got to retape some stuff, obviously. And so retaping a lot of this and getting it to work correctly was kind of important. The piece got a little bit of damage. I had been through 2 houses in 2 years. This is the 3rd one that I moved into, and long story short, I thought it just added character, so I wasn't, about adding fillers or making, doing whatever. I was just kind of more about finishing the piece and cleaned up so I can actually paint. I live in Phoenix, so getting this stuff outside, even though it's November, it was still 90 something degrees outside, or 98, or I think this day was low 80s. So to be fair, but it's point being is it's still really hot. And right here, I don't know if you can tell, but right there, boom, I've noticed that nails are coming out. That could have just been 2 years of not looking at the piece and realizing, crud. So I just take one of these, I don't know what these are called, and maybe that's my fault. I take one of these little nail puncharoonies, and just kind of push the nails down so that I can, continue to work on this. Off camera, I will do a little bit more here to just kind of seal that up. And then we're on to paint. And this is another mistake that I'm not proud of, is this paint I use is also 2 years old. And so you can't really tell, but it's kind of garbage. And I go take a nice little trip to Home Depot and grab another color that is darn near the same. Thankfully, I was able to find one. So right here, it's done. It's been a couple days. I should have put another day later sign here, but you can see the black inside I talked about there. And now I'm taking it off, and boom, another mistake. Putting the frog-like blue painter's tape, because there's 2 kinds of blue painter's tape. One is the frog one that's supposed to be incredible, like frog tape, and then regular painter's tape. I used the frog one over 2 years ago, and you can see that mark it left on that drawer. Even though everything's looking great, I mean, it's such a cool little contrast between the light blue and that drawer. It's just like, crud. So I'm taking all of the stuff off. You can see right here, the back I painted black. I just like, everything in something to be redone, not just one. Here's the top of the table, looks really great. And here I elect to do a clear polyurethane. So I'm spraying a clear polyurethane on. I elected not to replace the veneer at the front and the edge. I thought it left a cool little multicolored or multi-pigmented effect that I really liked. Right here, I'm trying to sand out the mark as best I can. The sandpaper is 400 grit, so I'm using 400 grit real light, very, very light, because this is a veneer. The mark does come out. You can't even tell anymore on the piece that it was there. And this is another mistake that I made that you'll see later on, is I sand this mark out, and I'm using right there, that's a dry cloth. And, you know, just to get the sand out of it. Here's the mistake I make. To clean that out and to really test that the mark is out, I just use a microfiber cloth that is damp. And if you're already a woodworker, you know that if I'm sealing with polyurethane, that's a problem. There's something that's gonna happen. Now I'm taking some colored pencils I have, and I'm fixing. You can see where I over sanded over 2 years ago, where I over sanded that drawer. And so now I'm just drawing in and recoloring that. Thankfully, I have a little bit of an artist background, so you can't even tell on the piece that this is here anymore. So I'm kind of proud of that. When I was first, I'm much older now, but when I was first growing old, it was between being a computer programmer or something with art, and I decided to not do that. Here you can still kind of see the mark of polyurethane. And I'm just hoping the polyurethane covers it up, so I'm just doing a prayer. It ends up covering it up, so there's no mark, but the polyurethane has another problem. So this is the end.
The next day.
And then the next day after the polyurethane dries, it might be really hard to see, but there's blistering. There's a white coating that's coming through. It looks horrible.
However,
you can definitely really see it right here really well.
It's fine.
Thankfully, the top of the actual dresser, because I didn't wipe this down with water, was fine. So one of the things you can do if you don't know is use a heat gun and try and press that out while heating up the polyurethane. Because Phoenix is so dry, the polyurethane already kind of took. So the heat gun did not work. So now I'm again 400 real light. I'm washing that polyurethane off, and I am just sanding that polyurethane off and cleaning each of these. I do dry it again just to try and get as much moisture out as possible. That's a cool little heat gun, or it's just a low setting heat on the heat gun. Instead of doing a polyurethane finish, I choose to do rejuvenating oil instead. There's a lot that's already been done with these drawers over years and years of abuse. That I do it a couple times. So here we're at the stage where I want to pick some hardware, and so this is just me going through a million different sites to pick some hardware. And 3 days later, let's see what we got.
3 days later.
So I ended up going with a classic antique look. Crazy thing about this is I did not like it. Right here, I'm putting it on and I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, I do not like this at all. Ended up loving it, so thank goodness I didn't switch it. Once it all comes together, it looks great. Right here, what I'm talking about is doing that extra mile, right? And one of the things you can do with extra mile is taking what are called fender washers, and these I think are 3/16 fender washers, so
You don't wear the wood anymore. The thing that's kind of important is you fill the lip. I want to put the rough metal lip this way, so a little less digging in.
you put them in there when you're attaching hardware, and it just is something that makes, the screw not completely mess up your piece. Again, I did the 2 coats of rejuvenating oil, and then I used something that I use on my cutting boards, which is called organic, I think it's called wood butter or something, whatever was on the screen. It's a great smell, and wood butter is just a great way to kind of seal that up and without having to use like a polyurethane or a varnish or something. Now, before we come to the big reveal, please take a moment to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and please like the video. It really helps from that algorithmic juice. And without further ado, here we go. See, it came out beautifully. I'm really happy with this. I love the contrast between the 2 tones. If you waited this long, start your comment with no water, and I'll try and reply to all of those. Thanks again for watching. Hope to see you guys in the next one.